Okay, so good afternoon. Is it all right? If you allow me, I'll give this talk in English. I think you'll find it easier to understand than my Flemish. And there are some English-speaking persons in the room. So I drove all the way up here with one arm just to tell you about common gulls, but it's a really nice subject. It's quite a welcome change from all the large white-headed gull stuff. So the story is that 5 years ago, Chris Gibbins, a Scottish birder who's really keen on gulls, he visited Romania in winter, the Black Sea coast, just to look at Caspian gulls. That was the idea. And then he also saw a lot of common gulls, and he realized that they looked different than the ones he was used to at home. There are a lot of common gulls breeding in Scotland, even on the rooftops of the university where he is working, and they looked really, really strange to him. So he realized that there's a lot that we didn't know about Hiniai, the Russian common gull, and he started developing some ideas. And we got in touch, we talked about it, and we said, oh, maybe we should do a paper, maybe we should write an article, but let's do it right. Let's do some research, let's take our time, and let's not confine ourselves to Russian common gull, but let's look at all the common gulls. There are 4 taxa, there are 4 subspecies, so to speak. But this one, is a really nice one. That's the American common gull, the mew gull, short-billed gull. It has various names in English. And this should really be a species. That's one conclusion from our paper. It's very clear. I mean, there's absolutely no reason, there's no argument against a split. It looks very different in all plumages. So we've developed well, we've looked at the primary pattern in detail, primary pattern of adults, primary pattern of second-year birds. Also, for first-year birds, we found a few subtle but new characters. But as it is, it's already a very, very distinct bird with these uniformly brown underparts and a lot of barring on the undertail coverts. It's quite a typical American gull. It breeds on a different continent. It has a separate range in winter and in summer. So it doesn't mix with the other subspecies. And we'll also discuss I'll also talk about the calls later on. So, short-billed gull. I guess it's no surprise for anyone that it should be really a different species. There has been some genetic research on it as well. There are 2 articles. One was by Zink many years ago, which was a bit limited, very small sample. But then there was Sternkopf, a German student, who wrote her thesis about genetics. She did genetic research about gulls. And one of the taxa groups that she looked at was the common gull group. And she found a lot of genetic difference between short-billed gull and the other 3 taxa. So, onward. We took our time, we did our research, and we made 12 different trips from California to Japan. This took us to many different landfills all over the northern hemisphere. This one was quite cozy with some company from curious cows and goats. This is Batumi in Georgia. So it's probably a well-known place for many of you, but maybe not this particular dump. Yep. But there are gulls in Georgia. In fact, I've never seen so many gulls as in Poti. Poti is an old industrial fishing harbor in Georgia along the eastern Black Sea coast. And I'm not exaggerating if I say that there were millions of black-headed gulls. In this flock, there are hundreds of slender-billed gulls. You see thousands or tens of thousands of Caspian gulls. It's just incredible. An amazing place, not just for raptors, but for gulls in winter. And we also made a trip to the museum, in the Zoological Museum of Moscow. So here I'm photographing a tray of slaty-backed gulls with, I don't know, maybe you've already noticed if you're really keen-eyed, but there's a great black-backed gull here for comparison. Yeah, it's a really nice museum. It's right in the center of Moscow, and there are so many hidden treasures there, so many trays of birds from all over Siberia and Western Russia. So a lot of interesting stuff to find, I'm sure. We looked at as many gulls as we could in 1 week, but we didn't have enough time for everything. This is a tray of Kamtschatka gulls. So recently they have started to preserve them in the best way possible. And so they cut off one wing and they spread it. And so for every specimen, they have the spread wing as well, which is really, really good for research. Okay, so because it's quite a complicated subject, actually. It's a nice subject, common gulls, but we underestimated it. In fact, when we wrote the paper, we sort of forced Dutch Birding to publish an extra issue in 2016, just for this one paper. So I'm going to limit myself here for this talk to one taxon only, Hinii, the Russian common gull. And these are the locations that we looked at. We didn't visit these places. These are all, or most of them are from the museum in Moscow, so just the locations where the specimens originated from. Most of our Hinii photographs were from Georgia. We also got a nice collection from Azerbaijan in winter, Istanbul in Turkey. We didn't really use Romania because we weren't sure how many European common gulls would be mixed in with the Russian ones. We got some from Kazakhstan in summer, and then a few vagrants that we looked at. And then there's this whole range here. So the red squares are good Hinii, so to speak. The circles are birds from the supposed intergradation zones. So keep in mind, Russian common gull is just a subspecies, and it just integrates clinally into canus on this side and into Kamtsjatkastormmeeuw on this side. So according to literature, the intergradation zone is here somewhere, just south of the White Sea and to Moscow. And then on the other side, this is the Lena River, between the Lena River and the Kolyma River, which is here somewhere. But actually, the specimens that we looked at, the skins in the Museum of Moscow from this region, they look exactly like Kamtsjatkastormmeeuw. And so you could just as well consider them Kamtsjatkastormmeeuw, I think. And on this side, we found a skin of Hinii from just west of Moscow, and also skins, and there are photographs as well, from far into European Russia, for example in Komi, where you have common gulls with a really similar primary pattern to canus. So it's not quite clear what's going on, and it's also quite impossible to know how, to what extent they are mixing. I guess it's very logical. It's only logical that they mix and that they integrate, but of course from the specimens you cannot tell. So you would need extensive visits to breeding colonies all over this region to find out what is really going on. But we hope that our paper is a first step in clearing up a bit of the confusion and a bit of the situation. One other thing is that these birds from the Lena River, they are quite puzzling indeed. They look a bit like in between Hinii and between Kamtsjatjensis. But also birds from Lake Baikal are puzzling. They also look intermediate, which is strange because Kamtsjatjensis shouldn't really be here at all. So the only thing that I can think of that is a possible explanation is that the Lena River actually springs here, just north of Lake Baikal, only 7 kilometers from Lake Baikal, if I remember correctly. And who knows? It's quite easy and quite feasible for common gulls to travel upstream and explore different regions, I guess. But anyway, let's continue. So just as a recap, this is a normal common gull. This is your local subspecies, canus. It has prominent head streaking. And most birds in winter, most first winter birds, they have a clean gray saddle. Here there are some dark shaft streaks, but not too many. Yeah, the bill is sort of dull greenish or grayish color. Okay. And in flight, the underwing is typically whitish and not very contrasting. We looked at tail patterns also because there has been confusion in Europe about common gulls with very dark tails. I'll skip these and just show one example that we looked at. This is a canus from Murmansk, and you can see that it has extensive barring on the upper tail coverts and quite a lot of black in the tail. So we found quite a lot of canus with extensive dark in the tail. This has somewhat been neglected in literature, I think. There's a lot more variation in canus than the literature has indicated. Okay, let's go back. So yes, this is an adult canus. Again, rather. So there's some streaking in the neck, but there's also streaking on the crown and around the eye. That's typical for canus in winter. And the bill is rather greenish, typically. And in flight, there's not too much black on the primaries. This one has a black band, a complete black band on P5, but many birds have even less, just a black spot or no black at all. And there's quite a lot of gray at the base, all the way to the outer hand, the outer edge. So that's quite typical. Okay. And then, if you visit the Caucasus region, or the Black Sea region, or the Caspian Sea region in winter, you get this image. So we have Caspian gull, nice Caspian gull here. And then there are these common gulls, and you can immediately see that they give a different impression because they are white-headed. They are all completely white-headed, these birds. So that's strange. That makes it already quite different from our birds in winter. What else? Well, you can see that the bill of this bird is a bit more yellowish. That's also quite typical for Hinii in winter. Strong colors of the bare parts. And this first winter here, it also has a lot of dark on the mantle. So you never really get this clean gray saddle, this uniform gray mantle of first winter canus. Okay. And also note that even though the wing coverts are quite darkish, the flanks are completely white in this bird. Now, there is a lot of variation. It's just a subspecies, and they are gulls, so it's never easy. But some of these birds, and I'm talking about like maybe 40, 50%, they're really quite striking, and it's surprising. I mean, to us, they looked to us it was a surprise that they were so different, because we didn't know. So here's another image. So this one was from Azerbaijan, and this photograph I took in Georgia. So the first winter here is not too different from Canus. It's not very remarkable. But the second winter bird is just completely white-headed and has typically just these very thin pencil streaks on the hind neck, very sharp. It's a very smart pattern, and it's somewhat reminiscent of Caspian gull in winter. I think it's equally striking. Oh, sorry. And the bill is, again, quite vivid in color. And then notice this adult. Notice how pale-eyed it is. So if you look at common gulls in Western Europe, or even all over Europe, you hardly ever see a bird with a really strikingly pale iris like this. But if I tell you that in Georgia and, well, in our complete sample, 20% of all adults had a pale eye like this, like really strikingly pale, then you can imagine how different they look when you scan a flock of 100 hinii in Georgia or in Azerbaijan in winter. You get a really different feel, a really different impression from your local gulls at your local patch. Yeah, this is another first winter hinii, which is quite similar to Canus, this one. But notice all these white edges. These are all new gray scapulars, like that first winter Canus you saw, but they all have a prominent white edge. So again, the pattern looks quite messy compared to Canus. I'm not saying that I would identify this bird when I saw it in Holland or in Belgium, but it's something worth knowing. That's more like it. So that's the most striking type of hinii, and it's quite a regular type. It's quite common. Notice the really white head, the thin brown spots on the neck, a very pink bill, and then this underwing is really white with very blackish secondaries and dark gray inner primaries and very blackish outer primaries. So the impression often is of a strikingly black and white underwing. So the underwing often looks, or the underwing coverts look white, but then you get this huge black trailing edge on the underwing. Also quite a different impression from Canus. So here's another one. So I call this the Asian look, because many Caspian gulls, many gulls in Asia, like Mongolicus and Barabensis, etc., they have this white head in winter with just a few streaks on the hind neck. And hinii conforms to this pattern as well. Another typical one with this blackish trailing edge and a very clean white body and head, very pink bill. I think birds like this, first winter birds are a bit difficult, a bit dodgy, because you don't have really strong field criteria. But I think that if you get a type like this in Belgium or in Holland, that you could claim it. I'm pretty sure that this is a bit different from Canus. And then there were these birds with just a completely brown underwing. They were rare, but we had maybe 10 of them or so. And these are so striking that we were just thinking, like, how is it possible that in 2015 we didn't know this? That birds like this have not been described. I mean, a common gull should have white underwings according to literature, but then you get these birds in the hinii range with just completely chocolate brown underwings. That was a complete mystery to us, complete surprise. Here's another one. Just very, very dark wings. To an extent I've never seen in Canus. Ja. Ze zijn variabel hoor. So this is a second winter, Hinii. So on average, the head is whiter than canus. There's this boa of very thin spots or very distinct sharp streaks. And on average, there's more black in the primaries, in adults as well as in second-year birds. This one has blackish all the way in, I think to primary 2. Often you will also see that they have a black tail band. This one has only very small blackish marks. And there's often also no mirror on P9. So these are mirrors, these white spots. The outermost one, that's primary 10. This is primary 9. This one has 2 white spots, so 2 mirrors, but I think I have a next one. Yeah, this one, only 1 mirror, which is quite rare in canus. In second winter canus, you usually have 2 white mirrors. Also notice the black tail marks, but there are also black marks on the secondaries. And that's interesting because that's very rare in canus. That's something to look at, especially in combination with such brown wing coverts and a white head. Occasionally you get these second winter canus that look very, very retarded, like the plumage is all brown. And these birds, they are tricky. They overlap with birds like this. But typically the secondaries are unmarked. It's quite rare for canus to have black spots on the secondaries. And such birds that look brown all over, they also have a brownish head, while Hinii typically has a white head. And look at the underwing as well. So even in second year, they can still have very brown underwing coverts. And the iris is already becoming pale in this bird, which you will never see. You will never get this in a second winter canus. Okay. Also notice the huge amount of black on the primaries. So then we come to the adults. Here's another nice example of a white-headed, Asian-looking Hinii with a strong bill, strong yellowish bill. This one has not too much black in the primaries, but it's quite typical to have a complete black band on P5, and the band is on average a bit broader, a bit deeper than in canus. This one has a lot more black. So this is P5 with a complete black band, as in Michaelis yellow-leg gull. And then on P4 there's also quite a lot of black. A lot of black on the underwing, white head. And I don't know if it's obvious from back in the room, but this one has a pale iris and quite sharp spotting on the head. And the yellow bill with a black ring make it look quite like a ring-billed gull, this one. So yeah, we've been using the pale iris as a criterion to distinguish between common gull and ring-billed gull. You could just as well use it to distinguish between Hinii and canus. It's quite a simple character. So here you can clearly see the pale iris. They look very strange, these birds. If you're used to your canus common gulls, they are also very long-winged with a narrow hand. They look a bit bigger in the field than canus. And of course, the upper parts are very darkish gray on average. This is probably a third year. Okay. We'll do an exercise. So you don't know which taxon this is. This is one of the 4 taxa of common gull. And because the subject became quite complicated, more so than we thought from the start, we looked at a lot of primary pattern combinations we tried to find unique combinations of characters in the primary pattern so that you could identify as many birds as possible anywhere on the planet. But that became like really, really complicated. So we opted for presenting this information in the form of an identification key. It's very unusual for birds to do it like this. It's more usual for insects or for plants. But we thought that this was the best way to do it. And let's see. So you'll find this table for adults in the paper, in the article. It's quite a long table, as you see. So, okay, that's it. So the idea is that you start from the top and then you work your way down, and hopefully you can find a combination that is unique, and then you can identify the bird. So if we apply this to this picture, this one. Okay, so we start from the top, and the first character to look at is P9, so the one but outermost primary. And question is there a distinct white tongue tip that is easily visible from above? So you just look. Okay, you can see the cursor. This is P9. This primary here. You can't see any tongue at all. It's just all black. So we can easily skip this, this feature. If you want to be really sure that there's no white tongue tip, you can look at the underside of the wing. This is P9. This is a tongue. So a tongue is a gray incision, a gray wedge into the black pattern. This is the tongue of P9. Here. So it's all gray. There's no white tongue tip. Okay, so then you look at B, the pattern of P5. Does it have no black, just a black spot, a broken black band, or a complete black band? Okay, we look here. This is P5, that's a complete black band. It cuts across the shaft. Okay. Does P8 have a white mirror? This is P8. There's no white spot here, there's no mirror. So we are here now. Does it have an entirely black outer web all the way to the primary coverts? Let's see. This is P8. We follow the outer web. Ah, there is gray here. There's a gray incision, a gray wedge at the base of the feather. So we are here. I've deliberately chosen a complicated bird. So if you can do this one, you know the whole paper basically. We check P7. Is there a tongue tip or no? This is P7, and I hope you can see that there's a big white spot here. That's the tongue tip, a white tongue tip. So, okay, P7 has a white tongue tip. Next step, does P9 have an entirely black base or no? P9, that's this one, as we know. This is the outer web. So the outside of the shaft, it's all black all the way to the primary coverts. So, okay, entirely black base. Next step, P8 with white tongue tip or no white tongue tip. This is P8. This is white. This is grayish. So there's no white tongue tip. It's okay. It's a bit tricky to see, perhaps, but I can assure you we have lots of photographs of this bird, and it's gray. This is white. The primary tips are white. This is grayish. It's fun. So P8 has no white tongue tip. We are here. P7 has a broad white tongue tip, as we know. Does P4 have some black? Yes. This is P4, this is a black spot. We are here. Is the tongue on P9 short, which means less than half of the length of the feather? This is the tongue of P9. Yes, it's short. This is only like 1/3 of the length of the feather. And then there are some more criteria that you need. Is the black pattern on P5 symmetrical in shape? Yes, it's a nice symmetrical W. Is the tongue on P8 long? Yes, this is more than half of the length of the feather. Does P9 have a fairly small mirror, which means that it's smaller than the black tip, or equal to the black tip? I would say it's approximately equal. This is a fairly small mirror. And then you get to Kamtsjatkastormmeeuw. So it's complicated, as you see. At least this bird is. But that means that even if this bird turns up in Holland, or if it turns up in North America, it doesn't matter. You can identify it because it really has this unique primary pattern. If you check every detail, so you can follow the key and then you can identify a range of birds, of course, far from all, but you can identify maybe like 40% of all adult Kamtsjatkastormmeeuws on the basis of primary pattern alone. You could also look at just the very, very strong streaking on the crown. That's actually also quite a strong indication for Kamtsjatkastormmeeuws. We also looked at calls, the display calls of common gulls, of the 4 taxa. This is a sonogram of canus. So you have these, the display call starts with these long drawn-out notes, which descend, and then you get repetition of short staccato notes. I will play a recording, but I'm sure you've heard this plenty of times, the display call of canus. It's actually a recording from Schiermonnikoog. So you can hear that the drawn-out notes at the start, they are quite long, high-pitched. Okay, I'll just play it one more time. Just note how long and drawn out the first notes are. So it goes on for more than a second, these first notes. And now I'll play short-billed gull from Alaska, a typical display call. And so it has the same structure. It starts with drawn-out notes and then staccato notes. But notice how the first notes are not so long and drawn out as canus, and how it descends and then immediately rises and then immediately descends again. So it goes up and goes down immediately. It's quite shorter. Okay, I think that's it. So if you check that on a sonogram, so here you have this shape, like a platform, more or less, and that's what it looks like in short-billed gull. So you get this cone-like shape, very symmetrical. So the calls are also a bit different, which is another reason to consider it a good species, I think. And then, okay, this is a flock of Kamtsjatkastormmeeuws from Japan. I have the call of Kamtsjatkensis as well. This was difficult, by the way, because unlike the other taxa, there were no recordings available at all, strangely enough, of Kamchatka gull. So Chris Gibbins made his own recordings in South Korea only 1 month ago. So this is really recent. The interesting thing is that the display call, although it's a bit lower pitched than average canus and average henii, which are very similar, there were some normal call notes from a pair that Chris was observing, and they were really strange for common gulls. If Chris wasn't telling me that he was looking at this pair and he was looking at the birds making these calls, I would never have guessed that these calls were from common gulls. Anyway, I will play the recording, and then at the end you will hear Chris explaining everything. So that's the display call. Now you get these notes. That's not a goose. That's really a common gull.
Okay, I'm watching these birds and that's really strange. It's almost like a mallard. There was a mallard going on there, but you hear it proceeding and then just following the long call, there's actually a really strange noise. Ow, 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 ow. Like, that sounds like a mallard or something, but it's the Kamtsjatkensis.
So, yeah, Chris was really excited. And, well, we don't know what this means. It's quite strange for a subspecies only to have such distinct calls, because neither me nor Chris have ever heard anything like it from other common gulls. But it was only one pair that was making these calls. We don't have any other recordings from other birds that made similar calls. So, yeah, I guess the typical "more research is needed" phrase applies here. It would be interesting, I think, to do more research on the breeding grounds, but it's quite difficult. It's quite remote. So, okay, I will leave you with this nice flock of Kamchatka gulls, and I will stop here.